Warm welcome to the studio. Thanks very much, Philip. Talk to us about the demand out there at the moment.
Demand is still very strong, and we're seeing that in all of our sectors and all the states as well, but it's particularly strong in the resources states of Western Australia and Queensland.
How surprised were you by last week's employment numbers, where we did see a pickup in full-time work, decline in part-time numbers? Now, looking across the sectors, does that kind of accord with where you see gaps in the market as far as full-time vacancies being the ones on the move up?
I think the market was somewhat surprised by the ABS data on Thursday. 11,000 new jobs did surprise the market, and particularly the full-time employment growth in jobs. There were some 54,000 new full-time jobs created. That doesn't actually surprise us. We're continuing to see very strong demand for executive and professional skill sets, and we don't expect that supply will keep up with that demand, and so we expect that growth to continue.
When you say supply won't keep up with demand, realistically then people will be going offshore?
I think a combination of things. I think we continue to produce outstanding professional talent, and we now operate in a global market for that talent, and a lot of the Australians, highly qualified Australians, work abroad, are willing to work abroad, and are being attracted by firms and companies and countries to work abroad. And so you see an increasing demand from international sources for our talent, as well as our local companies growing and continuing to grow and demanding that talent as well. So our local companies are competing with international companies for the same resources.
Do we need to do something to encourage them to stay in Australia, though? I mean, in terms of looking for problems down the track?
Absolutely, and we regularly talk about this, continuing to reinforce the benefits of staying in Australia and growing your career in Australia with an Australian firm. Many of the Australian firms are multinational companies, so many of the opportunities that those people would experience in a multinational company abroad, they can equally experience here locally. So we need to continue to work on that.
Why do they head offshore then?
I think it's a combination of things. I think there's obviously the lure of a new market or a different culture, particularly with some of the North Asian markets like China and Hong Kong. Equally, there's tax implications. I mean, clearly some of those markets have significantly less tax rates than we do in Australia. But the main reason we see people changing jobs is for career opportunities and career growth. And I think that's probably the main reason why people go offshore, to grow their career and develop their skill sets.
You talk about skilled as a kind of overarching category versus just simply labour, because we must distinguish, shouldn't we, particularly in the mining sector where you've talked about all that growth.
Yes.
There is a differentiation between just kind of, in the trenches proverbially, versus the brains, the kind
Absolutely.
of...
Absolutely. In any of these projects, you need both. In the large mining projects, you need engineers, highly qualified, highly trained professional engineers.
Are we keeping pace, though, with the graduates we're churning out in these areas? There's always been a perception that we've been producing far too many lawyers, far too many accountants, far too many doctors, and not enough of the non-sexy areas like the geology, like the engineering. It's always been sort of taking second place in the mindset.
I think it's difficult to comment on. I do think it is a valid point. I think we need to continue to work on our education systems to ensure people are taking these careers and these career choices. But we still produce outstanding engineers and outstanding geologists and outstanding metallurgists. And the issue is how many.
Well, yes, because you said supply-demand before.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we're probably not producing enough currently to keep up with the demand that we're experiencing, particularly in those resources states.
And realistic, when you have a deficit like that, how long is it going to take for that kind of cycle to redress itself?
Some time. I think many of the resources companies are now seeking skilled labour abroad to help them complement their local workforce. But it will take some time. It is a long-term problem, and governments and business need to address it that way.
I mean, all indications about the economy would suggest that this sort of demand isn't going to continue the next couple of years, though. We're going to go through some sort of slowdown, and certainly nothing like we've seen the past years. What do you see in terms of the labour market happening as we see the economy slow down? And, people can't head to the US now to work because they haven't got the strong economy either, have they?
Absolutely. I think there will be a slight slowdown, but I think the demand for these skills is growing, which is offsetting that slowdown perhaps in some sectors. We're still seeing many of the businesses that operate in a broad range of sectors demanding higher skills. We've still got plenty of mining projects that we haven't started or haven't commenced yet, plenty in the pipeline. Many of the large mining houses have enormous projects that they've got on hold, waiting for the skills and the resources to become available so that they can start them. So I think despite a general trend to see a slowing in demand in the economy, we still feel that professional skills will be highly sought after, and that will offset that slowing in demand.
Who are we competing against? Because of course your net is spread globally.
Yes.
Where are you kind of meeting this supply-demand deficit? If not in Australia, where do you find these people? Principally, what markets are they?
You need to cast your net very widely. I think there's certainly markets that produce outstanding talent like we do. South Africa, the US, the UK. For example, we've seen a doubling of the demand or inquiries in our London office to return to Australia. So, the UK market at the moment is under some pressure. So we're seeing a demand for our advice and our services in terms of finding jobs and roles in Australia.
Philip, I think we're going to have to leave it there, but for now, appreciate your insights. Always a pleasure to have you with us.